Hi everyone, my name is Andrea Azzori and I'm a PhD student at the University of Cagliari. In this presentation, I will be briefly presenting our work on demographic fairness in face recognition across fixed security levels, co-authored with Gianni Fenu and Mirko Marras. Biometric systems are highly dependent on two aspects, security and usability. The former is responsible for preventing an unauthorized user from being able to impersonate an authorized user, thereby gaining access to confidential information or locations. To be clear, think how you will feel if a stranger succeeded in unlocking your phone by showing their face. The second is responsible for ensuring that an authorized user successfully gains access to his or her own confidential data or places in the most transparent way possible. Again, try to think how you will feel if your phone failed to unlock with your face or required several attempts before granting you access. The issues we are given examples of will be formalized in the next slides. Relative to security, the main problem are false acceptances. For example, consider the case where a hypothetical unauthorized user is Brad Pitt, and by declaring to the biometric recognition system that he is George Clooney, the system actually recognizes him as such. This event is called false acceptance, and it occurs when the biometric system is mistakenly led to believe that the claimed identity and the real identity are the same. For a given user, the false acceptance rate indicates the probability that an imposter will be recognized as being him or her. This probability is computed by dividing the number of false acceptances found for the user by the total number of verification attempts. Relative to usability, the main problem are false rejections. For example, consider the case where the hypothetical user is George Clooney, and by declaring to the biometric recognition system that he is George Clooney, in this case that's true, the system does not recognize him as such. This event is called false rejection, and it occurs when the system mistakenly believes that the declared identity and the real identity are not the same, when in fact they are. For a given user, the false rejection rate indicates the probability that an authorized user will be recognized as not being him or her. This probability is computed by dividing the number of false rejections found for the user by the total number of verification attempts. By changing the security level of a biometric system, it is possible to decide how usable or secure it should be. However, it is necessary to make a premise. The level of usability and security are inversely proportional to each other. As one increases, the other one will decrease. Usability over a security threshold is measured to understand how much a biometric system tends to fail in truthful recognition, and thus lose usability if it is decided to guarantee a certain degree of security. For each security threshold, the biometric system will produce a certain rate of false acceptances and a certain rate of false rejections. For example, using 0.03 as a threshold, we will have 98% as total false acceptance rate and 1% as total false rejection rate. If we wanted to provide a false acceptance rate of 10%, we will then have to iterate along the threshold values until the false acceptance rate is the desired one. In this example, by using a threshold value of 0.8, we will be able to achieve this result, obtaining a relative false rejection rate of 72%. Actually, facial recognition systems tend to be more error-prone for certain demographic groups than others. For example, it is widely confirmed in literature how these systems tend to perform worse on women than on men. This discrimination, called unfairness, can lead to issues related to the usability and security of biometric systems. In addition, the discriminatory behaviors of artificial intelligence systems are becoming less and less accepted, both ethically and legally. Therefore, the aim of our work is to analyze how the disparity among groups changes as security levels become stronger. To contribute to explore this perspective, we perform an analysis on fairness variation across security levels and an analysis on relationships between image characteristics and disparate usability across security levels. Our work was based on the die-face dataset, balanced with respect to ethnicities, Asian, Black and Caucasian individuals, and gender, for a total of 6 demographic groups. This dataset was divided into 2 balanced parts. 70% was used to train our models, and the remaining 30% was used in the testing phase. Before being used, the images in the dataset underwent a series of preprocessing steps. First of all, we perform a face detection and alignment step on each photo. Then, we cropped out the face-only area in order to perform a resizing step to normalize the shape of every image. At the end, only on the test set, we used the Microsoft Cognitive Services API to extract information about facial hair, makeup, orientation, and occlusions. To extract latent representation from each image, we built and trained a range of face encoders based on state-of-the-art convolutional neural network backbones. Only during training, each backbone was plugged into a classification head. We then trained one face encoder for each combination, obtaining a total of 10 face encoders. For each user, we made up 56 image pairs, 6 positive, in which both photos are from the same user, and 50 negative, one of the two photos belong to another user of the same demographic group. By removing the classification head from the previously created models, we used the trained backbone to extract the 512 size latent representations from each pair of images, in order to compute the corresponding cosine similarity. To obtain the data for our experiments, we then followed the following procedure. For each model, considering one demographic group at a time, namely Asian men, Asian women, black women, Caucasian men, Caucasian women, we obtain, distinctly for each identity, the similarities of the created pairs as just seen. By using the procedure shown in the introductory section, we obtain the false rejection rates relative to false acceptance rate 1%, 0.1%, and 0.01%. And now, let's move to the experiments. In our work, we posed our focus on two main research questions. The first one aimed to analyze performance variations among groups across security levels, while the second one aimed to inspect correlations between our soft attributes, the ones we've extracted with Microsoft Cognitive Services API, and overall false rejection rate for each security level. Here, for each security level, we analyzed the standard deviation across overall false rejection rate for each demographic group. As we can see, the unfairness trend is steadily increasing as the imposed safety increases. However, some exceptions were found on the intermediate false acceptance threshold. Here, we can see the overall false rejection rate in a more granular way. Almost always, the increasing unfairness trend is still clearly noticeable and stable for each demographic group. Such trends, sometimes, have exceptions to which it is worth paying attention. For example, it can be seen that in the first two models on the left, the trend of black females performing worse than black males is reversed when the false acceptance threshold of 0.1% is crossed. On the same threshold, it is also possible to see that on the third model there is a similar but opposite reversal, which first sees black males as more disadvantaged than their female counterparts, and then leads to that counterpart having worse performance. The same type of inversion is also visible in the fourth model, but in this case relative to Asians and Caucasians. In a second analysis, we investigated the existence of correlationships between false rejection rates and the extent to which face characteristics are present under the same three security levels, by computing the corresponding Pearson correlation coefficients. Our results show that false rejection rate had positive correlations with smile, makeup, and face occlusion, and negative correlations were noticeable for facial hair, glasses, and image distortions. Both positive and negative correlations tended to be stronger as much as the security increased, except for exposure. Moving to conclusions, our experiments showed that increasing the level of security leads to an increase in unfairness in usability levels among demographic groups. The trend reversals noted in the first research question indicate how certain characteristics in the images are unevenly present across demographic groups, and that their correlation with false rejection rates increases as the level of security increases. In addition, beyond the safety threshold of 0.1%, some trends tend to disappear or reverse. In our experiments, most of the strong correlations are related to specific attributes of eye and mouth areas, as confirmed by previous studies. The positive correlations between false rejection rates and smile, makeup, and occlusions indicate, along with previous studies asserting that models acquire color information from the earliest layers, how such color distortions in the areas on which the model focus tend to compromise model performance. Negative correlations relative to facial hair and glasses relate to the addition of shapes and information, but with low color distortion. leading to better model performances. In general, the increase in correlation as the safety threshold increases confirm the validity of the hypothesis derived from the correlations, which otherwise would have trended null or negative. In next steps, we will therefore deepen our analysis with multifactor causal models. Other future directions include the use of our knowledge about phase characteristics and their correlationships with false rejection rates as a proxy for designing unfairness mitigation methods that do not require protected attribute labels. I really hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thanks for your attention and see you online on October 27th at the Artificial Intelligence Methods for Smart Cities 2022 workshop.